Hi, welcome. Welcome to How to Make Things Happen, Mastering Project Management. This is part of our Engineering Excellence Talk series. The series features multidisciplinary talks, and we are always on the lookout for new speakers and topics. So if you have any interesting ideas, please send mail to Alex. His email is up here on the slide. It is my great honor today to welcome Scott back to Microsoft for this talk today. Scott Berkun worked at Microsoft from 1994 to 2003. You might recognize his name from some of his popular books, Making Things Happen, which used to be called The Art of Project Management, and also Myths of Innovation. His work has appeared in the New York Times, the Washington Post, Wired Magazine, and on NPR, which thankfully just ended their pledge drive yesterday. He runs the PM Clinic at scottberkun.com, where he also blogs about management and creative thinking. So I'm going to turn it over to Scott. Welcome.
Hi. You guys hear me okay? Volume good? In the back? Okay. So first thing I have to do, I have all these free copies of the book to give away, and they only go to people in the front row. So there are 7 seats available in the front row. So if anyone wants to move up forward, this is your chance, front row. You already have one. You want 2? No? Oh, look at how we make people move. Look at this. Pavlov is alive and well. Here you go. You're in the front row. Welcome. Front row. We can see who the cheapskates are. Everyone know who is in need of a salary or bonus because they can't afford a book. And then we have the second row. We'll go to the second row. Here you go. Second row. You want a book. Free book. Authors don't make much as it is. We're giving them away for free. There you go. And someone puts up their hands. We're getting into the, see, you start off the bad trend, but you did start the trend. So here, you're an innovator. You're a trendsetter. And I'll save the rest for Q&A at the end. So I need to know the magic spell to make these slides go away.
Just click the next one.
Click
forward.
I'm just kidding. All right, there we go. Sorry, I'm a wise ass if you haven't noticed already. So thank you, Amy and Alex, for inviting me to come back here. I used to work here for quite a while. I worked here from 94 to 2003. I was mostly a program manager. Worked on Internet Explorer. I worked on, let's see. This does not want to work for me. Time out. Technical issue. Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. I can blabber while someone figures this out.
All right.
Okay.
Do you want the next slide?
Yes. Yeah, okay, yeah. So, right, I was talking about blah, 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 blah. I used to work on blah, 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 blah. The next thing I was supposed to talk about is, books. So the main reason I'm here is I left Microsoft in 2002 to write books. That was my ambition. That was why I quit. I wanted to write books, and I wanted to see if I could make a living writing books. And so far, that's worked out. I've written 2 books. The first book used to be called The Art of Project Management. It was a really popular book. It looked like this. Who here has a copy of this book? A lot of you. Cool. That's why you're here. Excellent. Thank you for coming. That's so cool. All right. Now, this book did really well, and for reasons I can't get into that were fairly painful, the title of the book had to change. The upside of the title of the book having to change means there's now a new edition of the book that looks a lot better. Right? This is kind of an ugly book, much better looking book. Now, I do have this copy of the book. This may seem strange, but is anyone here named Edward? Eddie? Middle name. Or do you know someone named Edward? No, someone named Edward. Would you like a copy of this book that's signed to him? Yeah. Here you go. So now, one of the funny things that happens as an author, right? And I'm not a big shot author or anything, but the book's done well enough that I have to sign copies and give them out to people. Sometimes they get signed, they get sent, and the address is wrong, and it comes back, and I'm stuck with these books that are signed to people who I can't find. So I had this book. It's been sitting around forever to Eddie, and I'm like, how do I give it out to someone who's not named Eddie? So there we go. All right, good, glad we matched it up. The second book I wrote was this book called The Myths of Innovation, and this book came out last year, and it's all about everything that I thought that I had learned at Microsoft when I was working on Internet Explorer and working in Windows about how innovation is supposed to happen. So it's really a history book. It's all about stories that come from history. And this book has done really well. It's actually been doing better than the first book has. Anyone want to copy this? All right, front people sit in the front rock. Okay. And then, so now we're back to this book here, Making Things Happen. And this book, since I got this weird opportunity to do a second edition fairly early, the book had only been out for about just under 2 years, I got a chance to go back and clean it up and make it shorter and think again about some of the stuff that I advise in here that maybe I don't agree with anymore and add exercises to it. So I do think it's actually a much better book. Are we good now? We're working? Excellent. Fantastic. The wonders of technology. Okay. Now, what I'd like to do to start, so I'm going to talk to you about an hour. I got a bunch of random stuff that I think will be of interest to you. The description talked about this idea of making things happen. What does that mean? And first question I have for you, though. How many of you are actually program managers? Have you your job title? Wow. Okay. The rest of you might want to run now. It's like you're trapped in a room full of program managers. Okay. So when I started at Microsoft, I actually did not start as a program manager. I interviewed as a program manager, but didn't get hired as a program manager. I made it all the way through the as-appropriate interview, and I didn't get an offer. But I came back and interviewed a second time as a usability engineer, and I got hired as a usability engineer, and I worked here as a usability engineer for about 10 months. And then I switched to program management. So I got about a year of watching other program managers work to be terrified at the prospect of what it would be like to actually be one. And when I started the company, there was this mythology around being a program manager. And I don't know if it's still true today, but back then there was. And there was this combination of heroic figures in my mind that epitomized the best program managers that I knew. So I want to just run through a couple of people who I thought of epitomized what great program managers do. So who's this guy? Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? That's the easy one. How about this guy? The Professional. Very good, very good. Who here's seen The Professional? Okay, actually this is not from The Professional. This is from La Femme Nikita. But Gene Reno is the same actor in both. He's pretty much playing the same role. You know, good. He gets 2 royalty checks for 2 different roles. They're basically the same. You know, good for him. Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, that'll come up at the end. This is a hardcore. How about this guy? Harvey Keitel. Yeah, I see. But what role? The Wolf from not the Wolf Man. That's a different guy. But he plays the Wolf, and this is from Pulp Fiction. And he's basically ripping off the cleaner from La Femme Nikita, but it's the same idea. Harvey Keitel, the right guy. Look at this guy. Gary Cooper. What film? High Noon. Who here has seen High Noon? Okay, the rest of you, your homework assignment, in fact, is probably a better use of your time than sitting and listening to me, is go watch this film. I swear to God, go watch this film. And all of a sudden you go, oh, that's what a great program manager has to be able to do. Really, fantastic film. It's not dated at all. Highly recommend it. If you learn nothing else from me today, you'll learn appreciation for old films you thought you'd never want to see. So that's what I'm going to do for you today. And then there's this guy. What's the actor's name? Okay, what's the character's name? Nobody knows the character's name. Everybody thinks it's Bill Murray. John Winger is his name. If you had known the name, I would have given you a copy of the book, but too late now. Anyway, so we got these guys, right? Who do we got? We got the stoic, wise guy. We got the I'll do whatever it takes, no matter how violent or evil it is. We got same thing, but smarter and funnier and more charming. We got I will do the right thing no matter who is behind me. I'll stand my ground. Another good film is 12 Angry Men. Similar premise, similar, good-looking older actor guy playing the lone hero role. And then we got this guy that I lead through humor. I make people laugh, and that's why people get behind me, and things happen because I make it fun. And I make it fun. He's the only guy that really has a sense of humor in all these heroes. So you got stoicism, do what it takes. You got be charming. You got violence if necessary. And then you got people will follow you if you make it fun. It's a pretty good combination of people to have. And these were always in the back of my mind, these guys, when I was thinking about what it meant to be a good program manager. And the first thing to think about when you're thinking about making things happen, you want to be more effective, you want to be a program manager, you want to make better software, is to have a role model. Have someone, whether it's a made-up character like these people are, or a person you've seen on your team, have a role model that you emulate and try to say, wait, what qualities do they embody that I don't, that I can learn from that make them more effective than me? And we talk, I know Microsoft probably still has the mentor program and all that stuff, but that tends to be very clinical and HR-ish. And you want heroes. You want people that break rules and do things that are not standard operating procedure. So you want to find someone. If you don't have one, borrow one of these guys, or the combination of them, like what I did when I was here. So I'm going to talk about prioritization. I'm going to talk about saying no, talk about being insane, and then I'll talk about relentlessness. And that'll take about 45 minutes to an hour, or about 20 minutes for Q&A. And if I say something that offends you or bothers you, I'm totally fine with you interrupting me and asking a question and making it interactive. But pick your questions wisely. Make it something I can respond to quickly. No paragraph, 3-part questions while we're going. Save that stuff, the complicated stuff, for the end. Okay? Sound good? 45 minutes. You guys are still awake? Okay? Great. I'm a fan of Occam's razor. Anyone know what Occam's razor is? Yeah. Simplest explanation. Now, Occam was a philosopher, priest, I don't remember his whole story, in the 17th century. This very simple idea for how you think about the world, which is given 2 possible ways to think about something, a complicated way and a simpler way. Generally, the simpler way is better. So when I think about project management and all the stuff, software engineering and agile development, quality, and all these things, it's really complicated, and I don't function that well in complicated. I just have a simple mind. I can't handle all that stuff. So I look for ways to slice through complicated things that divide it in an interesting way. And on the seams, where you divide it, you'll have a different way of thinking about whatever it is you're talking about. So when it comes to all this project management, program management, product planning, software development stuff, this is one way to slice it apart, which is to say, no matter what you're working on, whether it's software, web development, kernel development, whatever it is, there's always more work than time. Always. There's always more possible work than time. That's a function of the universe. It's just true. It is. Always more work than time. Second thing is there's always more opinions than decisions. Sometimes infinitely more, depending on who you work with. Some of those decisions get made, and then more opinions come out. After the decision gets made, it goes on and on. So these are the 2 fundamental things that if you want to do well, you want to make stuff, you want to make good stuff, you have to come up with a way to manage. More work than time, more opinions than decisions. So I make a living now writing books and doing consulting and doing a lot of public speaking about this stuff. So I get invited into companies, tech sector companies and Fortune 500 companies, to both talk about ways to manage this stuff, but also to examine how they're doing it. And fundamentally, the problems that people have to deal with handling these 2 issues. They don't handle them well. They don't handle the number of opinions they have well. They don't handle the fact that they have too much work well. And that's why they fail. Occam's razor, obviously there's huge flaws in this way of thinking about the world, but think about your own project. Too much work, how do you decide what you're going to do? That's probably why you're struggling if you're struggling. If you're handling the amount of work correctly, and you're managing that fine, you're probably in situations where it takes too long for a decision to get made. Well, that means you have too many opinions. There's too many opinions that are given equal weight, and therefore nothing actually happens. So many projects, if you were to make a visual representation of them, are kind of like this, where there's a system in place, there are shelves, and there's kind of a hallway, but it's fallen apart. There's multiple organization systems that work here. There's multiple people who have come in here and tried to stack things or pile things up or put things on one system, and then someone else comes in and does the same thing. So it's sort of like a kind of Greek torture, like Sisyphus or something, that you're given the task of organizing a room, but there's someone else that you can't see who organizes the room when you're not there, and they organize it differently. So you're constantly in this whirlwind of different organization techniques going on at the same time. Well, that's often what goes on around these things. That you know in your group or your project, there's some official way that decisions are made, then there's the unofficial way that decisions are made. And those things compete with each other, because some people are playing by some rules and some people are playing by other rules. So there's a fundamental, if you were to make a visual representation of most projects, most software projects, it would look something like this, where there's a system, but it's falling apart. Too many opinions, too many decisions, too much work. Now, the saving grace, the simple way to think about resolving this is that you always want to have a structure that breaks all the work down, all the decisions down into 3 levels of thinking. And my hypothesis is you can do this for any kind of work. For building the Hoover Dam, for building a space shuttle, for building a highway, for building a viaduct, for building a software project, for building a website. You can do it for anything. And those 3 levels are broken down to these 3 parts: goals, features, and work items. Goals, features, and work items. Now, anyone who works on any project has some system in place that represents these things. And they might be called different things. It might be called a vision document. It might be called an MRD. Who here uses MRDs? Not that many people. Good. Does anyone know what an MRD is, other than those people? Okay, you guys don't use that stuff anymore. That's good. Don't like the MRDs. It sounds like a weapon, doesn't it? We're going to bring in our, Panther missiles and our MRDs, and then we'll be victorious. Okay. Yeah, no warfare talk today. Let's stay out of this. No warfare talk. That'd be good. Making things happen. We don't want to talk about war. All right. So you got these three levels of thinking: goals, features, and work items. And you guys are familiar with all this stuff because this is in the lingo. It's sort of the undercurrent of how most project teams plan their work. That in the specs, okay, there's goals in the specs. There's a vision document. There's goals in the vision document. There's work items. There's a work item list. But this stuff is usually managed on such large a scale and in such a complicated way that no one can keep the relationship between these three things together in their head while they're working. And that prevents things from being effective, prevents things from happening well. What you want to be able to do is that most of the people who are doing work on a project can show up to work every day and understand the relationship between these three things. So that if you had three lists, you had a list of goals, you had a list of features, and you had a list of work items, that the relationship between these three things is something people intuitively understand. That if someone's assigned work item number 532, engineer shows up at work, yeah, I'm going to work on 532 today. That he has a sense of, okay, work item 532 is, we're doing that because it's going to make feature number 12 happen. We're doing feature number 12 because it's going to support goal number 1. There's this integrity. It's a very important word. This is integrity of understanding the relationship between these things. And that enables the person who's doing 532 to understand how it fits into everything else. Now, once you reach a point that a project's large enough that you can no longer have this kind of view, or this kind of view is no longer natural because you have 500 work items or 100 features, once you get to the point where this gets out of scale, people no longer have that context. And now people don't fully understand why they're doing what they're doing. There may be a reason that they're told why they're doing, but it doesn't fully make sense because they can't keep this model in their head. So one tactic for making things happen, for being an effective leader at any scale, is making sure that people always are provided with this kind of view of their work. That they can see for themselves how the thing that they're building, this little individual work item, this bug fix, this module that is purely engineering driven, fits into this larger thing and fits into this bigger thing. And I guarantee you, teams that are more effective or produce higher quality work are teams where a higher percentage of people feel that way on a daily basis than teams that don't. And your job as a leader, as a project manager, may be to convert this huge, enormous, huge plan that's supposed to take 2 years, this enormous, complicated thing, and translate it for your team, for your feature team, so they think about it in this way. Even though the actual literal plan that's been drafted or built by a committee or whatever is actually way more complicated and hard to parse out. So one of the things that Amy mentioned, I ran, when I was still at Microsoft, I did PM training for a little bit, and I ran this thing at Microsoft called PM Clinic. And PM Clinic was this little email list with this very simple premise that every Monday, a situation would be sent out that a PM is dealing with. And the list would talk about that situation for a week, and then on Friday we would write a summary, and then Monday we'd start over again with a new situation. And it worked really well. When I left the company, I knew I was writing a book on project management. I started the list up again. So if you're interested in this list, which I think is a fantastic resource actually, it's pmclinic.org. You can just go there, you sign up, very low traffic but high quality. Anyway, I mentioned that because one of the key things I've learned about teaching this stuff is talking about stuff in the abstract doesn't really help you that much. It's very easy for people like me to come in and make things up and talk about abstract bullshit, guru nonsense, and doesn't really help you. So for all these things I'm talking about, I'm going to bring up a situation that a real PM is dealing with related to the stuff I'm talking about, and I'm going to use that to help drive it home. So here's an actual situation. We are stuck in goal approval gridlock. We have 3 proposed goal lists with corresponding features, but can't get all the senior managers to sign off. We're already behind schedule, so many feature teams have already started working. I'm stuck in the middle as a lead. What should I do? So who here has been in a situation like this? Oh, come on. Really now? You guys must be sitting with your managers next to you or something. You don't want to confess. But seriously, who has been in a situation like this? A few of you. Okay. Because if no one is, then I'll skip it and we'll move on. Okay? So you don't have to lie or anything. I want to pressure you. So this is a situation where they've entirely failed to deliver the leadership structure needed for people to be engaged. So the lead has 2 obligations here. The first obligation is to let the people above him know, hey, you guys are now the roadblock. Management is completely the roadblock for us making decisions to move forward. So as a lead, that lead word is not just a hierarchical indicator. It doesn't just mean you have reports. A lead is a verb, to lead. So you have to lead the charge for people going and say, look, right now you guys are the roadblock. It probably doesn't even matter which of these, I'm going the wrong way. It probably doesn't even matter which of if there's 3 proposed goal lists, by the way, what the fuck is going on? If there's 3 proposed goal lists, how about you propose 1 goal list? Odds of it being approved are probably much greater that way. Anyway, that the fact that there's this proposal thing going on while the team is ready and waiting for work, there's a total mismatch between what management thinking and what's actually going on the ground. And the lead's job as the intermediary is to make sure that the people above the ground know what's going on the ground. But then the second thing is that even in this totally chaotic environment, there's nothing that prevents a feature team leader from saying, look, right now we're going to operate with this set of goals. We're going to assume we're going for these features. And because we assume we're going with those features, we're going to build these work items. And to create a virtual sanity in that feature team's zone. So even though the team hasn't figured it out yet, we're going to make some assumptions. We might be wrong. We're going to go forward and start building this stuff. So there's an opportunity in that kind of chaos for a leader to make things happen. Nothing's going on. There's not enough decisions being made yet. There's an opportunity for a leader to make those decisions on their own. Now, tied to this is the bright yellow line, which is the whole idea of what it means to defend priorities. And this was something that I was taught as a PM was possibly my most important function. As a PM on Internet Explorer and then on Windows, my job was to make sure that once we had this stable set of priorities and we agreed upon this plan that was going to deliver what we thought was going to be a valuable, useful product for customers, my job was to defend that plan. To be like the wolf guy, or to be like to be vicious about defending that plan. To set the bar so high for change to happen that people had a really good argument, and we wouldn't change things just because it was interesting, or just because someone was passionate about an idea. The bar was really high. So most projects that fail, or struggle, or are late, or have low quality, it usually has to do with a project team that is managed with a very flexible, a very loose set of understanding for what it means to be Pri 1 or Pri 2. So these yellow lines are just meant to indicate that if you're thinking of the world this way, goals, features, and work items, there's always this bright line that tells you, okay, this is stuff we've committed to, this is stuff that people have asked for, but we haven't committed to it yet. The strength of that line and how strong you are at controlling where that goes determines how effective your team will be in making things happen. It's effectively the ability to say no. And there are many project teams that I see, I'm sure many project teams that you see, where there is a prioritization list, there is a Pri 1, Pri 2 thing, but somehow every week there's another thing that gets added, another thing that gets added, another thing gets added. And it's called Pri 1, but all of a sudden the math that was done to say we can do 10 features this month, we can build 10. We go, okay, we're going to build these 10. And the next week someone says, oh, we forgot about this, we forgot about this, we forgot about this. Now it's 14. Week has gone by, there's 3 weeks left, there's more work to be done. There's a pathology of that kind of behavior that leads to ineffective project management and low-quality projects. So the ability for someone to say, look, we've agreed to this, I'm defending this, I'm going to use every tactic I know of to make sure that nothing gets added. And if something does get added, I'm going to make sure that something else gets removed. It's the most basic kind of accounting in the world, but you'd be surprised. Well, actually, you might not be surprised. I'm often asked to come in and give advice to projects, and they expect there's some complicated reason why they're struggling. But often it's that simple. It's just basic. Who here finished their taxes today? Who here still has to do their taxes? Oh, a few people. Okay. Just telling you, your time might be better spent not in this room. I mean, I think I'm important and all, but I'm not the IRS. I'm not going to track you down. I don't know where you live. The IRS does. All right. Coming back to this, but it's basic accounting, credit and debt. And most project teams, especially when executives and middle managers are too involved in the project planning, end up with this huge debt that they've built into the project early on because they continue to say yes. And these lines become increasingly transparent. Or not transparent, but what's the biology word for a barrier that can be permeated? Permeable. Smart man. No, I'm thinking of osmosis, maybe. Anyway, permeable's better. All right, let's move on. So I talked about this. There has to be someone who's defending this list. Effective project teams, or leaders of effective project teams, are people who are effective at keeping that list bright and making sure that anytime they're in the room and a question comes up where more work is being suggested, that either the schedule gets changed or if that new work is added, something is dropped. It's a very simple fundamental principle that any basic project management book will talk about, but it's uncommon that it's actually practiced, which explains why so many projects are late or overcommitted or have low quality. It's all about managing that line. We don't need to talk about this. So part of this is something that comes up in the book, is about saying no. And the only way you can defend that line, the only way you can show up to a meeting and go and say, look, we can't add that because we already have too many Prior 1 features. The only way you can do this is by saying no. N-O. It's the shortest word, one of the shortest words in the English language, but it's very rarely, there are a lot of cultures where you're not allowed to say it. That if you were to go and say, no, we can't do that, you'd be told you're being difficult, you're not, what's the Microsoft phrase? Dealing with ambiguity. They still use that word? Yeah. Okay, dealing with ambiguity, yeah. So it's always used to drive me nuts, because it's like, it assumes that all ambiguity is equal, you know? That like, there's this tiny little bit of ambiguity about like what color the dialog box is going to be, versus like, you know, we keep changing the goals for the entire project every month. You know, there's this huge spectrum of ambiguity. We never talk about that. Anyway, someone has to be able to say no. And the effectiveness in project management, effectiveness in leadership is all about being clever and smart and savvy about how you say no and making the effect of what you say equivalent to saying no without actually saying it. So there's all these different ways to say the phrase. And effective leaders know the many different ways, the many different flavors. No, this doesn't fit our priorities, which calls into question, hey, if you get the priority changed, then okay, you can get the goal changed, then fine, this will fit. But right now our goal is to go west. And you're saying we should go north. So unless you get our goal changed to go north, I got to say no to this. It's not about you being a jerk, being an arrogant program manager. It's about you defending the priorities, which everyone in your organization should expect you to do. Only if we have time. A clever one is no, only if you make ... happen. Because that gives them a ticket to go and bother someone else. If you can get my developer to agree to work this weekend, then sure. If you can get my VP to sign off on giving us another headcount, then great. And now you take all the pressure that someone was putting on you to make a change, and you're saying, go here. Now, if it's an impossible thing and they don't know that, then you're basically giving them a wild goose chase, and then they'll pursue that for a while, and by the time they come back to you, the project's done, or the thing is shipped. So anyway, you guys know this. This is very basic project management literature kind of stuff. But I guarantee you, if you go back to your, this thing will end at 11:30, so you have the rest of today to be in meetings and talk to other people. Count how many times you actually hear people saying no. It should be high. Depending on where you are on the project, it should be very high. But even early on, there should be conversations with people saying, no, it doesn't fit our priorities. No, it doesn't fit our goals. No, we don't have the resources for that. No, 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 no. And if you're a project manager or a leader, you should be thinking about the rate at which you say no. It should be high. The more specific your goals are, the higher the rate of you saying no should be. And the better the people you work with should understand why the value of you doing that. And it's not because you're a jerk. It's not because you're Napoleon. It's because you're trying to keep the project focused and moving forward. Okay. So here's another situation. Our team has fallen behind schedule so far that no one's talking about it anymore. My group manager just keeps telling us not to worry, but doesn't offer any real plan and keeps saying yes to our VP about new work. Half the team is freaking out now, but I don't know what to say. So who here's been in this situation? More people. Okay, situations are getting better. Excellent, excellent. So what'd you guys do? Therapy? Alcohol? What's the? All right, switch teams. Cliff, good. See, now he actually said no, and people laughed. There used to be a thing at Microsoft. I don't know if it's still true in the culture, but if you switch teams mid-project, that was like the worst kind of betrayal possible. It's like going to be a mark on your permanent record that somehow you didn't have you weren't macho enough to survive like everyone else, which I think is complete bullshit. If you're in a group that's failing and sucking and forcing you to be miserable, then they shouldn't want you to stay anyway. They shouldn't want you to stay in an environment where you're miserable because you're making other people miserable. So anyway, I think you did the right thing. Because every time you move, you're sending a message. You're saying the most important kind of no, which is that I cannot be a happy person working for this group. And that's a message, especially if you're good or you're talented or you have value, which you do because you've been hired. That's a message that gets sent to your boss's boss that says, wow, maybe we are doing this wrong. Maybe we do need to change how we manage projects or manage people. Anyway, so this situation is an example of something we're going to talk about more in a second. It's an example of lack of sanity. So there's a message that once you reach a point that no one's talking about it more, does anyone know? This has a lot to do with sociology and psychology. Can anyone take a guess as to why does that happen? Anyone have a theory as to why? So people are panicking, oh, we're going to die, the building's on fire, we're going to die, and then people stop saying they're going to die. What's going on there? Gave up. Denial. 12 stages. Fight. What? Flight instead of fight. Any psych majors here? No. Okay, so I can make stuff up. All right, cool. Excellent. So there's probably a principle of what goes on there. You guys are there, right? Once people stop talking about something that everyone knows is a problem, they have given up. Or they've given up hope that someone is going to solve the problem for them. Given up hope that someone's going to solve the problem for them. Now, that's fine. If you're an individual, you don't consider yourself a leader, you're a contributor, you're an engineer, you make something that someone else uses or reuses. If you're a leader and you know half your team is freaking out but you don't know what to say, well, guess what? You can say you don't know what to say. There's a principle of psychology called validation. When people are feeling something, they talk about it because they want to know, is it just me? Or does this room smell really bad? Is it just me or is it you? Is it both of us? Oh, we both smell the same thing. Okay, it's not us. Okay. Wow, I feel more comfortable now knowing it's not. There's a validation has a huge emotional and psychological value. And as a leader, no matter what's going on, no matter what the problem is, there's a role to be played in having someone come out and say, look, guys, I know this situation is kind of messed up. We're overbooked. I understand that. I'm trying to figure out what I can do to resolve it. I'm talking to our manager tomorrow. If there's something in the short term I can do to make you more effective or to help you deal with this, let me know. But I know what's going on. It's not your fault. We're going to deal with it. It takes about 15 seconds to say. And the effect that has is get people out of this denial and giving up mode. And now they've recognized that whatever the solution is, it probably has something to do with you. And even if you don't end up solving the problem, the fact that you came and validated their feelings and gave them a chance to vent a little bit or express their perspective on stuff, you've now gotten +1, +2, +3 in their respect book. And that increase in their perception will pay off on the next decision, on the next problem. That's how you get a good reputation as a leader. So even if you can't solve the problem functionally, addressing the reality of the situation has a huge, huge payoff. Part 2 of the situation is ask this question. When things are not going how you think they should, and you believe a lot of other people feel the same way that you do, well, whose job is it to do something about it? Or how do you decide whether it's your problem or not? It's not a rhetorical question, although it sounded rhetorical. Sorry about that. I'm in lecture mode. But how do you decide? How much? What'd you say? How many months to review? Good answer. Smart guy. Savvy. Smart guy. Anyone else? Yeah. Everyone's job. Okay. Who here feels it's everyone's job? Not everyone. Haha. Yeah. Any other thoughts? Any other? The project manager. Okay. Everyone's job to raise the next level. Okay. Anyone have a counter? Yeah?
Frankly, it's a problem in a lot of projects even recognize it.
Okay.
So whoever is the first to recognize it.
Okay. To raise your hand and say, I think there's a problem. Yeah. Okay. Any other opinions? One more maybe. Over here. You guys have been quiet. You guys still awake? Good? Okay. Yeah.
We have to have a course to be off course.
Have to have a course to be off course. All right. So then the cynical group manager is going to say, but we never define the course, and no one can come to me and say, we're off course. Excellent. This is a new management philosophy, right? It's like plausible deniability management, right? Well, I never had a plan, so how can they say the plan was bad? All right.
Is that the next book?
Yes, that is. That is the next book. Yeah. All right, here we go. The most common answers I get are these three. Everyone's, which a couple people mentioned, my boss's problem, or my problem. Now, there's a problem with the everything answer, because the everything answer is it's very democratic and egalitarian, but it assumes that somehow everyone's voices are equal, that somehow if anyone were to raise it first, that it would be treated equally, and that it's like the belief that anyone who finds a problem has an equally likely chance of them being heard or a response being made to that request for something to be done about it. Which isn't true. It's not. And it is everyone's responsibility to ensure that everyone's on a team and everyone has some commitment level. But as soon as you put the word manager in your title, leader in your job description, the responsibility becomes yours. Certainly for anyone who considers you a leader, or anyone who considers you a manager, or the veteran, or the driver, if you want to use any of that vocabulary, then what comes with that level of prestige comes greater responsibility for crap like this. It does. In fact, you argue it defines their equivalent. That if you're not the first person to start look for these things and talk with them, then you're really not living up to whatever ideal you have about what it means to be a leader or a manager or a driver. So here's a situation that's related to this. We just saw a demo of a partner team's website. It was beyond awful. I wanted to laugh, but realized they thought it was awesome. Half my team was there, including various senior people, but no one said anything, which made me scared to speak up myself. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but I also don't want to be stuck with their half-baked trash. Help. Who here has been in this situation? Okay. So the rest of you must be giving the half-baked trash to these guys. Okay. So anyone have any advice for this situation? How would you handle this? What would you say? So you would raise your hand and say, guys, I'm sorry, but your stuff sucks. Okay. So you'd say, look, the performance is bad, the UI is problematic, and you didn't really look at our, it's not consistent with anything we do. You'd have. Okay, so you're saying so there's two strategies. Either you speak up and you bite the bullet and have everyone hate you or whatever, look like the jackass, or when the meeting ends, you grab the person and say, hey, I got to give you this feedback. I didn't want to do it in front of the group. Okay? Is there a third option? Did you have an option? Yeah. What if it was so bad that you really believed they were insane? Would you ever just, because what you're doing is polite. You're trying to get them to see. You're trying to get them to see the error in their ways. To say, did you think about an alternative to using a checkbox for using 50,000 checkboxes in one page? Did you think of an alternative? When really you're thinking, oh my God, what is wrong with these people? You're trying to demonstrate to them that you're trying to teach them on the fly, right? Okay. Yeah. Okay. So you're looking for backup. You're looking for backup. You want a wingman. So you don't want to go in alone. I see. Okay. Okay. Anyone else have a strategy here? Yeah.
I kind of tried the old Columbo method.
The Columbo. Play dumb. So you play dumb. Okay. All right. We got play dumb. So much you're writing these down. It's a good list here. Yeah. How does it meet the goals? So you're back in her playbook, which is you're trying to walk them through like the baby steps of what they should have thought and hoping that in the middle of a presentation they go, oh yeah, you're right, this does suck. You're right. Oh yeah, well, let us do over, which never happens. This never happened in the history. Yeah.
Assuming it was an hour meeting, think about it, look at the site myself,
Okay.
put down some mitigation.
So you do offline. Offline, yeah. Okay. So I would argue that there's a certain bar that every culture has for what is thrown out of meetings. There is a bar. And I've been on teams where that bar was really high. That if you showed up to it used to be review meetings. So when you had your VP review and you showed up there, that VPs used to, this is at least the old Windows division, you showed up there with something crappy, they would just say, this sucks, come back, we'll reschedule the meeting. This is so bad, they would just throw you out. So there was a bar that was set that said, we will not even have a conversation about this if I as the senior person in the room or the people in the room believe this is not good enough. That bar is somewhere for every group. And probably Microsoft's gotten bigger, it's a bigger company, it's a less confrontational culture, which is good in many ways. That bar has probably gotten lower. But one of the things in this question is to ask yourself, where is that bar? If you're the leader, again, you're the program manager, the project manager, whatever, you have a leadership role, let's assume you're the most senior person in the room, and something that you think is completely idiotic and a waste of everyone's time is going on. How much time do you allow to be spent? There's 10 people in the room. That's 10 person hours being spent observing something and being polite about something that you think is rubbish. Is that a good use of your project's time? Does that make things happen? No. So there's a bar that you need to think about for yourself, and the more senior you are, the more you're thinking about it for your group as to what is a waste of time. And to make sure that those wastes of time, the number of those incidents that happen drops down. And that doesn't happen unless some kind of statement is made or confrontation is, I don't mean confrontation in the violent sense, that someone is directly communicating about their sense of what's going on. The more polite and passive you are, being polite and passive have their place, but this isn't it. And there's one thing in here, right, which is very important. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. So the assumption is in there that by giving feedback, like a couple of people here have suggested, that someone's feelings are going to be hurt, and that that's bad. There are many different ways to give direct feedback. And the more savvy you are about communication, the less emotionally painful that feedback is. That I don't have to tell you, if I tell you your stuff is bad, that doesn't mean I think you are bad. If I tell you that your work is subpar, it doesn't mean you are subpar. There's a distinction. And if you're careful about how you give feedback, you can be very direct without violating someone's sense of value. So what could happen here is someone 5 minutes in goes, hey guys, look, I apologize, I don't want to do this, but I have 3 major problems with what you've shown so far. And I'll give them to you right now, I'll give you a chance to respond. But if you don't have a good answer to respond to these things, then I'm going to suggest that we reschedule this meeting so you've had a chance to address those things. I don't want to waste your time, I don't want to waste our team's time. So here's the 3 issues. Let's talk about them. Talk about them. Look guys, we talked about it for a little bit. I don't think this is a good use of everyone's time, so let's reschedule the meeting. Let's break up the meeting, and you and I, one-on-one, can use this time to review what you've presented. Nothing that offensive about that. In fact, it's an opportunity for that person to go, you know what, maybe I didn't prepare enough. Anyway, my point here is that there's a threshold in here, and you as a leader define where that threshold is. And the more time it's spent entertaining or suffering fools, entertaining stuff that's really low quality, if your team in the room and they're entertaining low quality, you're training everyone else to be tolerant of the same kind of stuff and to be polite instead of being productive. Or that it's more important never not to be polite than it is to, I'm going to get this wrong. It's more important never to not be polite. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. I'll ruin it if I keep going. All right, human critical path. Who here knows about critical path, the PMI stuff, critical path modeling, work breakdown structure? Okay, you guys are, all right, that's higher than the old, back in the day, like no one knew what this stuff was. Program managers and project managers kind of assumed that they were the first people ever to project manage anything. So this is a critical path diagram for something. I don't even know what it is. But the idea is it's a critical path diagram. So you got your estimates, and then these lines indicate that this work item, that these 2 work items depend on that work item. So this work on this can't start till the work on this finishes. And it's meant to indicate, the sequence of events that need to take place on a project. Right? Everyone more or less get what this shows? Okay. In working on this book, I spent a lot of time reading all the project management literature. I'm writing a book on project management. I figured I should read what all this stuff has been written. And there's this view of the world that's pervasive in all the project management literature, most of it, that's centered on this view of the world. That if only you could make the right charts and look at them in the right way, that everything else will just happen. And if you fail, it's because you didn't chart right. I'm serious. There are these books that are written that you think that they never, that this is, the secret to the universe is in PERT charts. Anyway, the better view, the more this stuff is useful. It helps you think about the project differently. Certainly about critical path management on complicated projects. Yes, you need to think about it this way. But it's super limited because it abstracts out all of the power and complications that come in when these things have names, which they do, because there are people who are going to do those bits of work. And the human critical path is this other way of thinking about diagramming and charts, which is to say, if you don't have an understanding for how these people who have these dependencies on each other relate to each other, you assume it's always the same and it's uniform, then you're guaranteed to fail. That's the missing magic from these charts. Because you don't know whether Robert and Tyler make it along really well, but Jack hates Tyler. Hates him. Can't stand working with him. And the way the project's been structured, Jack is now set up to depend on something Tyler's doing, which is going to explode. It's going to happen. He's going to check in something. It's going to break his code. He's going to be pissed off about it. If you're not thinking about the critical path from a human perspective and managing the project from that perspective, then the charting doesn't really tell you the core information that you need to have, that you need to know. Now, engineers, development managers, sometimes think about these things, but sometimes they don't. And the project manager coming into these scheduling meetings and looking at these dependency trees has to introduce the human factor into these to say, look, we've set up this feature team, which has been working really great. These guys get along really well. And in the project shift, we're going to rebuild this entire team. We're going to distribute them to different projects now because we shipped. We got this 5 people who work together as a unit fantastically well. Shouldn't we take that unit as an entirety and allow them to work on a different project where they can stay working as a unit? That's the kind of thinking you start to think about when you look at the project from a human view. The behavior that most software companies do is the opposite. They look at it from a unit view. We've got this developer who's fantastic. He knows these 3 particular kinds of technologies, so where can we use him? Let's put him there. This person there. She's going to go there. And it's individuals. And it denies the fact that there are relationships between people that are intangible and social and personal that play a huge role in whether a project is going to be effective or not. So the human critical path. We know this is a discussion of the formal critical path, the engineering critical path. Someone has to say, wait, what about the human critical path? If we think just of the personality involved, are we setting ourselves up for disaster? And one particular instance of the human critical path thinking is when you deal with, what was the phrase? Powerful but annoying people. Who here has had to deal recently with a powerful but annoying person? Everybody. I finally found something everybody deals with. Excellent. All right. Tough bunch. All right, so let's say you have you. And let's say we have Rupert. And he's powerful and annoying. Maybe he's your boss, maybe he's your boss's boss, or maybe you're the PM and he's the test manager for the group or the dev manager for the group. I don't know, something like that. Now, the simple view of this is say, well, I got to deal with this person, so I'm going to deal with them directly. And I'm going to be miserable. I'm always trying to handle them or work with them, but they have more power than I do, and they annoy me, so I'm not that effective in dealing with this person. So people often ask for, hey, Scott or consultant person, I got this boss or this manager, and every time I try to deal with them, they never listen to what I say, or they cut me off, or they're sarcastic and rude, or I can't find them. How do I deal better with that person? And the best strategy, thinking about the human critical path, is to look for someone else. You want to look for Jack. You want to find someone who maybe doesn't have as much power, but actually has a really good ability to convince Rupert to do things better than yours. And maybe they're more powerful than you, but your relationship with them is much better. Now you have the person who you actually want to work through. The human critical path doesn't necessarily mean you have to go directly to Rupert. It just means you need to be able to convince Rupert of something or get his approval on something. So instead, you want to work with Jack. You want to have a relationship with Jack. You can go to Jack and say, look, next time you talk to Rupert, are you going to be talking to Rupert about X, Y, or Z? Oh, if you do, can you ask for this? Or can you give me advice on how to talk to Rupert? You want the perspective from Jack of what the best way is to get to Rupert. Or the simpler solution is that if you know that Rupert's always in a better mood when Jack's around because they get along so well, then you want to try to make sure as much decision-making that you depend on Rupert for involves Jack. That Jack's in the room when those decisions happen. And maybe it's not Jack. Maybe it's just the fact that there are certain kinds of situations where Rupert is less annoying. He might be the most annoying person in the world. There's still situations where he's less annoying than he is on average. So what are the situations? Is it when he's alone? When he's in a group meeting? When there's 3 people there? Is it over lunch? Is it in his office when he's sitting there? I can jump in and talk to him privately. It's an aside. You want to figure out all these other human pathway approaches to dealing with situations like this. So the human critical path. It's about psychology. It's about understanding people. It's about empathy and communication. It's not about your project management knowledge. And if you read the histories of any great project, whether it's like the Brooklyn Bridge or the Big Dig, which people criticize, but there are lots of great things that they did there, or the space race in the 60s, these huge bureaucratic organizations where you think there's nothing sensible that can happen. There's all kinds of examples of people being cunning and clever about this kind of problem. And that has a lot to do with why they were effective. Much more so than how smart they were or what project management book they read, or it's a lot to do with this kind of savviness. Let me just see how we're doing time-wise. Okay, we're doing well. I'm going to speed past this because I suspect that you guys know all this stuff already. Being relentless, people talk about that all the time. I'm going to skip that. I'm talking a little bit about being savvy. The unspoken trick or metaphor for dealing with decision-making in large organizations that people don't talk about that much. The best metaphor that I've heard is this one, which involves thinking of the pathway that your decisions need to make to be effective. And in the abstract, if you were working alone You're working on a project of one. You're the project manager and developer. You're remodeling your house or you're cleaning up your bathroom. Whatever your project is, personal project, you're working alone. Your decisions have to just be vetted through you. Or maybe your spouse, right? Or your kids maybe. Very small number of people. You're not focused on the vetting. You're not focused on the course these decisions have to make. When you get into a bigger organization, there's more people who have involvement or have a voice or say or you need approval from in order for a decision to go through. So you have on the one hand, you have this design, decision-making in the abstract, I am working alone. And then once you've figured this out with yourself or your team, there's this, how do we navigate this through the organization? We've got this plan we think is great in the abstract. But now I've got this other group that we have to get approval from. We're depending on this third group. How am I going to navigate this thing through those things? So it's really threading a needle. You are taking this thing that's been constructed in one way, and you have to find a way to thread it through. And that skill set, I'm trying to think of the buzzword, jargon, organizational agility. Is that what you're going to say? Organizational agility. Is that still used a lot, organizational agility? Yeah, organizational agility and dealing with ambiguity. Those are the two things I used to write on my wall. Those were like the things that were abused to death. I'm miserable in this group. Nothing good ever gets done. Well, you're just not dealing with ambiguity well. I hate everybody. They argue all the time. You just need to improve your organizational agility. All right. There's always an answer, right? Okay. Yeah. So the problem becomes the bigger an organization gets, the bigger a project gets, the more program managers there are who think they need to be involved in everything, they need to approve every decision. It becomes more like this, where you have a pile of these things that need to be threaded together. And your job becomes less about the design and development and much more about how you are going to get these needle holes to line up so you can string something through them. That's really what the job becomes. And that's a much less sexy and attractive job to most people. But that's really the way that you make things happen in larger organizations. Is you start paying more attention to how other people get these things to line up. And how people get Rupert to nudge his group over a little bit. And Sally to nudge her group over a little bit so they're closer. And now their team has an easier path to follow for this stuff to go through. That's what management becomes in the large. Is you're nudging and adjusting and trying to get these things to line up so that your team has a pathway for those things to go through. And that view really has much more to do with politics than it does with any kind of tactics or project management knowledge or agile development or any of these other street level kinds of things. It has much more to do with understanding how subtle and tenuous those pathways are. The last thing I want to talk to you about is design. So who here thinks that your goal, think of the project you're working on right now. Is one of the goals of that project to make something great? Raise your hand. Great. Okay. The rest of you, your goal's good? What's the goal? Mediocre? We'll have an easy ship schedule this year. Our goal is not to suck so much, right? Not to suck so much. Underline the so, right? Suck a little bit less. All right. And of course, we're talking about sucking. I'm going to show you a picture of Outlook. Any Outlook team people here? Good. All right. No one threw anything. Actually, I like Outlook. But Outlook is a classic example of about greatness. I don't think Outlook is a great piece of software. I don't. I'll come out and say it. I'll be up front with you guys. I don't think it's a great piece of software. It's got way too much going on to be a great piece of software. And part of why there's way too much going on, in the late 90s, program manager culture, this is my own hypothesis. I don't know. I can't support this with evidence or data. But in the late 90s, the ratio of program managers to everyone else exploded. Totally exploded, at least in Windows and Office. Totally exploded. And a byproduct of that is program managers are all driven by ownership, by taking control over a certain thing and saying, this is mine, I'm going to lead this team, but it's my area. And this parallelization occurred where, not parallelization, but division, that instead of having software designed as one unified thing that would be experienced by a customer as if it was made by one person, became fractionalized. I got this unit, you got that unit, we're going to divide it up. And divide and conquer is great for engineering. Because engineering is more abstracted. You create a module. It's got this language. Someone interfaces with it. And those people don't need to talk to each other very much. When it comes to interface design or designing something that has integrity, something that is great, you cannot divide and conquer the design. Can't do it. Because there's enough idiosyncratic things about how each individual component or thing is designed, you end up with something that doesn't hold together very well. Or it's inconsistent in ways that are frustrating. Sometimes inconsistencies can be fine, but it's inconsistent in ways that are frustrating. If there's any way to map the complaints people have always had about Microsoft software to how Microsoft manages software development, has a lot to do with program managers. It does. The reason why every feature is so proud of itself and wants so much attention has a lot to do because program managers are proud of themselves and want attention. Program managers get more rewards and bonuses if their feature is the hot feature for their release. So they're in there in the project subversively, not subversively, but they're in the project trying to say, my thing's more important. Bubble it up. Can't my be in the top 10 in the toolbar? There's all this desire for attention. And if you look, I asked about the word great specifically for this reason. Think of anything else in any other industry that you would describe as great. A great meal, a great afternoon, a great film, whatever it is, a great automobile. Think of what it is that makes it great. And it often has to do with integrity. That there's some system of thinking that is applied consistently through the thing. So for me, it's film. I love film. I love talking about film. We haven't guessed already. And this is a picture from what film? Anybody know? Seventh Seal. Yeah, it was Ingmar Bergman, dark, gloomy guy, not the most uplifting film to watch, especially in Seattle in like November. Bad choice. Survival rate would be very low. But good, July, you want something that's going to make you think a little more deeply about stuff. Anyway, classic film. People know this guy. This is the death guy, and he's been an icon that shows up in other places, even though people don't know where it's from. But anyway, Ingmar Bergman is known for films that have a very specific, distinctive style. And that the style is achieved because the film is not divided up into 30 program manager units. It's not. They didn't take the screen and say, you know what, you're going to get quadrant A, you're going to get quadrant B, quadrant D. We'll write a spec and a vision document and hope that at the end it all looks the same and works the same. No, it wouldn't work. It also wouldn't work if you divide it by time. People have tried that. It never works. It works only in discordance, that it creates these divergences of theme and character that can work from a divergent perspective. It's interesting in the differences. But for a product, you don't want those kinds of divergences. Anyway, my point here is about integrity. And that consensus prevents greatness. I'm going to throw this out there. You guys are going to yell at me during Q&A. That's okay. Think about that. Consensus prevents greatness. It prevents, by design, it prevents people, individuals, from having too much authority over the design or decision-making about a particular thing. Consensus prevents greatness. It doesn't prevent goodness. Goodness might go up a little bit. Might be more likely because there's more opinions being vetted out. It's going to be averaged out. But greatness is prevented. And what you want to have happen, if you think about great things, think about great software, great website, what you want to have happen is really this. I'm not advocating that you should be a Napoleon or you want to pick one Napoleon who makes all the decisions for something. But you do want this. You want there to be the right amount of authority for the right person at the right time. So that if you are in the beginning of planning a movie and there's 12 wannabe directors there and they're all fighting for who's going to be the director, the answer is not to say, let's divide the film into 12 parts. The answer is for 12 people to say, you know what, we want to make a great film. So of the 12 of us, we need to pick one person who's going to be our virtual director. They're going to decide the theme of the film. They're going to decide the script. They're going to be the lead person for that kind of decision-making, and the rest of us are going to implement it. We can debate about it, but when there's a decision and a tiebreaker, it's that person. That's the kind of thinking that leads to great products, to great software, and to making great stuff happen. Is recognizing when your authority is best served for a great thing by delegating it, by giving it away to someone else who can play that role. Okay, so we talked about 3 levels of work. We talked about saying no, calling people out in the truth, responsibility that leaders have about speaking up. We also talked about how there's this level of tolerance for idiocy, and you as a leader to control that. Think about person hours spent in meetings where bullshit's happening. You have some control. You have the ability to make that not happen, make people more effective. Being relentless, and I talked about being savvy, about this lining things up, that there's a sense that there's it's a very gradual and small, it's a very different way of thinking about where your value is, about managing those politics. But that's what happens in larger organizations. And my last point was about consensus and greatness and dividing things up. That if you do really want to make stuff great, you have to think about the best way to serve that might be by delegating some of your authority or relegating it to someone who can play more of a leadership role in the vision for what you're making. So the last thing I will say is I write about this stuff all the time. This is how I make a living, talking and writing about this stuff. If I've said anything of interest to you, there's way more stuff that's free up on my website, videos and podcasts. I do a lot of public speaking. A lot of it gets filmed. There's lots and lots of stuff up there, so I recommend you go up there and check it out. And then thanks for listening. We're at an hour, so yeah. If you want to give me applause, you can do that now. Okay, thank you. There's that weird silence there. And I'm happy to do Q&A for about 15 minutes or so. I'll give you a book if you ask a question. Yeah. Yeah.
How do you scale that? You know, Microsoft for large-scale projects, and I've worked on smaller projects where that works. Having one person has
Yeah.
but on larger projects, it's really hard to do that.
I have to repeat the question. So the question was, how does it scale? How do you make greatness? How do you make the integrity of greatness? Whatever point I was trying to make, how do you make that scale? There's three answers. The first is that the cynical, sarcastic answer is that it doesn't. It might not. It might not be possible to do it. When you look at examples of it where it succeeded in scale, I mentioned a couple of them. One of my favorites, since it's engineering culture, is NASA. NASA in the 60s, 62 to 69. Just 500,000 people worked on that project at some point over those 7 years. And they did amazingly high-quality work with a vision, a clear vision for how they did that. How did they do that? Well, they started off with a leader who set this goal that was very crystal clear. We're going to get to the moon in 10 years. And back. That's important. Actually, he's making an excellent point. It would have been, they probably could have just gone there one way in 5. Right? So design requirements. It's all about the requirements. So one is that it can get much harder. But if you look at how they did it, there were certain people who had way more control over the vision and the goal setting. A guy named Van Braun. Right? He's probably the most well-known, you know who Van Braun is? Okay. So he's probably the most well-known figure because he was the visionary for how the rocket should work, the visionary of the system design. There was a small number of people that had a visionary role. So vision, small. Doing the actual engineering work implementation, large and diverse and distributed. So if you can find a way to consolidate the visioning or the design, that allows you to separate it out. So I guess what I'm advocating is you don't need to, if you separate out who has control over the vision for making a piece of software from who's actually doing the implementation, you want the experience to be unified and to be great. Well, that means you probably need more consolidation over who's deciding what that experience is like. Smaller number of people there. If you do that, then, okay, now you have everyone else's role is to fulfill that vision. There's less glory in the design for those people, but more satisfaction because the quality of what they're making goes up. Apple has a culture that's more like that, where it's, as soon as a smaller number of people are going to make those decisions, and everyone's okay with that because they know their contribution, although in the abstract it's smaller from a design perspective. There's fewer people who are going to go and look at the magazine cover and say, see that button? That's my button. There's fewer people who are going to say that. Microsoft people do that all the time. Come on. I know you've all done it, right? Fewer number of people are going to say that, but a larger number of people are going to say, I built this little widget, but it's part of the iPod. They feel much better about that than the other way. Yeah, in the back. I'm sorry, you were where? Okay. Yeah. Right. Okay. Okay, so the question was, excellent question. He's working with people who are frustrated by the fact that he as the PM gets to make the last call. And how do you explain to them the value of your role? Okay, so the first thing is the best place to start is a specific example where a situation, this is something you have to earn. And it's something you end up having to earn again and again with different teams who've never worked with an effective PM. Because they've probably been burned by other program managers, where they felt like there's a good decision that they wanted to make, the PM disagreed, and the PM won, and they never felt like they were given a good argument as to why their opinion wasn't important enough. And then you show up, and they think you're the same. They think they think you're Napoleon, and you're mad with power, and you're just making decisions because you can. So you need to demonstrate for them that there's a logic behind the decisions that you make. If you can demonstrate that logic for them, they'll want you in the room. They'll want you to make decisions. And you do that by as follows. If it's sort of like the King of Solomon biblical thing. If you're there and the tester is arguing with another tester, and you're in the room, and they're arguing back and forth, and you think it's an idiotic argument, And you come in there and go, hey guys, there's a better way to argue about what you're arguing about. Instead of worrying about A, you probably should worry about B and C. If you get both of them to go, oh, this guy's right. We should be arguing about B and C. Now, there's a certain credibility about decision making that you're earning passively. And then when something comes up and one of those testers is in an argument with you, you got some credibility with them that you're a rational, reasonable guy. And the decisions you're making are really for what you think are in the best interest of the project. Once you get, that's something you have to earn. You can't draw a diagram and say, look, I'm the PM, so 2 plus 5 equals 7. Therefore, I should make more decisions than you. Like, it doesn't work that way. Once they trust you and recognize that your perspective is more valuable or better than them on some issues, it gets easier. The shorter answer is anyone who's been in an argument where no one takes authority in ending the argument recognizes the value of someone who's willing to say, look, guys, there's 10 people here. One of us has to decide. I'm going to say it's Bob because Bob has the best perspective. If you're that guy, you're not even making the decision. You're just saying that this 10-person argument is a waste of everyone's time. So if you prove that your value is not selfish or your motivation isn't selfish, all the other stuff gets much easier. Yeah? Mm-hmm. Okay. Time warp here. All right, so that was his question in the back, right? I think I actually mentioned them through rambling. The first was about maybe it can't scale. Generally, great things are made by smaller numbers of people. It's true. Doesn't mean it can't happen in large, but there's fewer examples. 2, the people who have executive authority have to have some conception of what greatness is. And that's often that's rare. I don't know what they feed those people. I don't know what it is in there. You know, I'm being obnoxious here because I know there's no executives in this room. What's that? Yeah, but they have to have a vision document is just words. When you have someone who's involved in decisions that affect that large a scale, they have to have some sensibility or some sense of aesthetics or sense of value, sense of what a great thing could possibly be like in order to support an organization that's going to deliver on that. And there's very few executives that are cultivated with that as part of why they become executives. They're rare, there are some, but they're few. So you can do everything else right, have the right staff. You can have a fantastic designer, a fantastic design team, fantastic vision. But if you have an executive that keeps wanting to put more features in, imagine being an executive over Ingmar Bergman, the filmmaker. Like that wait, more characters. We need another character here. There's not enough characters. I love characters. Put more characters in. What about color? You know, color's way more fun. It should be fun color. That's a very common conversation between executive management and the drivers of a creative vision for products. So I can go on and on. There's lots of other stuff in there, but that's a longer answer. Yeah?
What's the easiest way to burn capital as a PM? What's the easiest way? Or what's the easiest way to build it up?
Okay, so the question was, what's the easiest way to burn capital and the easiest way to build it up? The easiest way to burn capital, the first thing that's coming to mind, I don't know if it's the best answer, is what the gentleman asked in the back, is if you act like the shit. That I'm the PM, so therefore it's going to go this way. Engineer's going to be like, fuck this, I'm writing the code. I don't spec. Yeah, good luck with that. Right? I was taught very early on, engineers and developers, they are really the show, and they should be. They're the person in the trenches, and it's a weird thing about tech sector, the whole sociology of tech sector stuff, but they're people in the trenches who actually have a ton more power than anyone else, because they're actually doing the hard stuff. So as a PM, your power comes through engineering. It does. Sorry, it does. So if you want to be effective, or you want to burn capital, you want to make the engineers feel like you are useless. And you get in the way, and you prevent them from doing their best work. You want more capital? Opposite. You want them to think of you as, hey, when Scott's in the room, you know, the level of bullshit goes down, I'm more effective. Scott helps me focus on the stuff I like to do, which is writing code. He gets roadblocks out of my way. Oh, so when he comes knocking on my door and asks me to slip this feature in, yeah, I'll do that for him because he looks out for me, I'll look out for him. So it's all about the value that engineers have for you. If I had to pick one thing, that would be it. Yeah? I sit down. So let me make sure I get the question. Bill, so how do you pitch a plan to high level people? Oh, okay. So how do you? Okay, so how do you you're asking about the thread the needle question. Okay. How do you convince multiple high-level people of a singular plan? Jeez. Yeah. Well, so the best way to think about this stuff is you always start small. You can never convince 10 people at any level of anything at the same time. So if there's 10 people, you go and say, all right, I got A, B, C, D, E. Who do I know the best? Or who has the highest opinion of me at these 10? That's criteria 1. Who's the highest opinion of me? Criteria 2 is who has the most influence? I want to pick the person who has the highest opinion of me who has the most influence. That's the person who I have the greatest chance of convincing and also the greatest value in convincing. So let's say it's Rupert. I don't know why I like Rupert today, but let's say it's Rupert. So Rupert, he likes me the best. He'll actually give me 10 minutes of his time. He also is the most influential, or one of the most influential people. So once I convince him with those 10 minutes, he goes, Scott, this is a great plan. I go, Rupert, can you come with me to talk to Fred? I'm going to use Rupert. I'm not being manipulative here. I'm going to use Rupert to help me talk to Fred. Then once I got Rupert and Fred, now maybe I can go to the other 8 and say, look, I got this plan. Rupert and Fred have already agreed to this plan. I want to run it by you. And you have to build it. The problem, though, is that in a large organization with people who are very busy and disinterested in your plan, it can be hard to make even that happen. But that's the way it happens. One person at a time. Pick your people carefully. You want to build some momentum. And once you have 2 or 3 people, then you have some force now. You can say, well, 3 of your peers have already agreed. You're on your way. Yep. Yes, sir.
So along a similar line, right? Worked on a project recently where we had probably 10 involved, and the problem we had was we would get
Pass this down.
someone to make a decision, and later we would get in a room with them, or get in a room with their work for them, and they would say, well, the guy that we just talked to, we got agreement from, is telling them something different.
Okay. So, let me make sure I understand the question. So it's his question, how do you get 10 people? It's the bonus round of his question. How do you get 10 people, executives, to agree, and you have one of them who agreed, but you've heard that he's telling his team something else?
Yes.
Okay.
Directly board a meeting, and they said no.
Okay, but he was not there. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is go back to, well, I guess it's an executive. So you only get this is part of the trick. You only get a limited window, as it can be very small with these people, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of a weird, anyway. A limited window, so you have to figure how am I going to use that window. So before I went to him, the first thing I was going to say was you got to go straight to him and ask him, but you don't want to use your bullet for that. So I'd want corroborating evidence that this is actually true. I heard it from one person. Who else do I know on that team? I'm going to ask them. I want to make sure this is actually really going on. And once I know what's going on, then I can go back to him and say, I need to, we agreed on this thing, you signed off on it, and I'm hearing that the group is, you're telling the team something different. What's up? There's 2 things that are going on. Two possible things that are going on. One, he's doing it on purpose, and he's just totally baiting you and just blowing you off, and which is a political strategy that can work, right? He's buying time. He told you what he needed to tell you to get you off his back. Or he is confused, and he doesn't realize that he's doing what he's doing, which is possible. And I don't know what the third thing was. So there's 2 things. He changed his mind, right? But if he changed his mind, he should have come back to this. He should have informed you he's changing his mind, at least at the same time he told his team he changed his mind. So, yes. Thank you. I knew there was a third one. So, yeah. So what he said, that the third option is that you might be confused, and what you thought you got him to agree to isn't actually the case. So you can corroborate that, too, without having to go to him. Is you go back to your other peer in the room. Didn't we agree they were going to give us 10 bologna sandwiches? Yeah, he said 10. You go back and say, right, there we go. All right. Maybe 1 or 2 more on the aisle. Yeah. Okay.
Don't necessarily all get along.
Oh.
But they have to get it done.
Okay, so what do you do with a group of people who don't get along but have to? Who here has been on a team with people who don't get along but have to? Everybody. Okay, so there's hope. There's hope. Or at least you have people to drink with, right? All right. So, you got to wonder who constructed this team. There's some feedback that they need, either about who they hire or how they chose who's going to work on this, because this instance is an instance of chemistry where they failed. So someone needs to be aware, and it's whoever the boss is of this team. It might be you, I don't know, it could be your man. And someone has to be, what did I do here that I can learn from Do we need to spend more time, writing down the list? And there's some other work that should have been done to prevent this from happening. Thing number 2, it's possible that there's one thorn, there's one person who is the problem and makes everyone else miserable. And as a result of their misery, they become much more difficult to deal with. And if you were to make a list, I'm sure you could stack rank on, it's a difficult team, everyone hates each other, but I bet there's Survivor. I bet there's one person who everyone hates the most or has the hardest time working with. It's true. It has to be. It's just stack ranking, right? So the simple strategy is to see if you can identify that there's that kind of polarity, that most of the team is doing okay, but this one guy, this one engineer, tester is really bugging everybody. If that's the case, then you can get that person off the team or have a conversation with that person. Say, look, we have some issues here. I'm not saying it's your fault, but we got to talk about how we help you grow out of this or change your behavior or something. So you're looking for a way to make it a smaller problem. That's really the goal. Make it a smaller problem. To say the whole team is messed up, not that much you can do. Divide it up. Maybe there's 2 people or 3 people. Or maybe the people who are complaining, there's a similar complaint they all have. That everyone hates each other because it's like what this guy said. They all say one thing and do something else. If that's what everyone's complaining about, then that's something you can try to, you can, like we talked about before, that's something you can raise as an issue for the team. Hey guys, look, everyone's upset. Totally reasonable why we're all upset. We're all pissing each other off for the same reason. And the reason is X. We don't follow up with each other. B, we ignore each other. And I want to get it out there, okay? And now we need to have a discussion or some kind of training or something where we work to reduce our causing of suffering for each other. So to sum up, A, you're looking for a way to make it a smaller problem. Either who or what. And then once you know it's a smaller problem, that's something as a PM or a leader you can attack. In the back, yeah.
So what's the take on these acronyms of OARP, RACI and all that? I mean, I've seen that some groups use it, some groups don't. People are not shouting to me when I was in business school, but I haven't seen any much success, understanding what they mean and going into a project knowing exactly what they're doing.
What were the acronyms that you threw out there?
RACI, RSPI, and OARP, Owner Approval Reviewer.
Oh my, okay. So I've never heard of any of those. So, no, I don't. RACI? R-A-C. Oh, okay. Yeah, maybe I've heard of that one. So his question was, I got to repeat the question for all the people out there who's still there. Don't you have work to do? Woo. Okay. The value of the acronyms and methodologies.
Does it help to have a common understanding of what everyone knows
Yes.
before you get into the situation?
Okay.
The problem with Microsoft is nobody understands that. Even if they know the acronym, everybody has to contribute, so they have
Okay, got it. I got it. So the question was, does it help? Is there value in having everyone understand their roles before they even start working? Is that close enough? Okay. The answer, of course, is yes. There's a certain, we all speak the same language, English. We all, or most of us speak the same language, English. You have to have certain, we all know that there's an engineer and tester. Everyone can agree on that. There's an engineer and a tester. So the commonalities do help you because it gives you an assumed set of units of knowledge that you can build upon. So that's valuable. But when it gets to the level of detail of many of these systems, the acronyms and the PMI stuff, and when it gets to that level of detail, it's no longer about something that anyone actually does anymore. And it becomes about rule following and trying to check things off a checklist, which is really not how people work. That stuff is useful as a guiding post. It gives you an example, a reference point. But reference points are not meant to be copied. They're meant to, I see. That might work, but that wouldn't work for me. Okay, I'm going to take that and use it. And then I'm still taking responsibility as the leader for what my team does. The reason why these things tend to be so popular, these methodologies, is it absolves leaders of responsibility. If the project, I'm going to take, goobity-doo, that's the new thing, the goobity-doo method, I'm going to put that on my team. When the project fails, I can go, well, goobity-doo really isn't that good. It's not my fault. I used goobity-doo. And then, here's the next thing, goobity-doo 2. It's the updated, great, let's try that. So I'm very sensitive and cautious about all that stuff. It's useful, great, read about it, great, but that's never going to solve the problem. So I have 2 books left. Do I have time for 2? Yeah? Okay. Right here. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Last question. Thank you. See? He spoke up. Look at that. Well done. Excellent. So you get the last question. Is it a good one?
Thank you.
No pressure or anything. Okay?
What can we do in that?
Project manager's ineffective. How is this different from normal life? Too many project managers in here to make that joke. So the question was, if you're an engineer and you're working with someone in a leadership role who's ineffective, what do you do? The answer that I'm thinking of is the same answer I gave to the lady who had the question about the team that hates each other, which is, he's ineffective. Okay, but there's probably 10 things that you'd like someone in his role to do. Let's say there's 10. And maybe he sucks at 8 of them. But there's 2 he's okay at. All right, so that means in your relationship with him, you want to use him or interact with him more for those 2, interact with him less for the other 8, if you can. The level of independence of an engineer and a project manager varies widely. On some teams, project managers, and this is not just at Microsoft, I mean in general. On some teams, a project manager is just a tracker. They're there to say, is this done yet? Check. Is this done yet? Okay, here's our schedule. Build the schedule. And they don't really get involved in decision-making or leadership roles. And that can work. On other organizations, it's the opposite, where the project manager is a leader, just deciding the vision, leading triage, and doing all this active work. So there's a spectrum of how much direct interaction decision-making the 2 of them have. So if it were me and I was an engineer, I'd say, what are the things that I expect someone in his role to do? Which ones is he good at? Which ones is he bad at? I want to try to use him more for the good ones and stay away from the bad ones. The more HR-ish answer is that's feedback that you should give him in some way to say, look, I'm an engineer here. I realize a couple of things that I'd like to see happen so I can be more effective. Can you do X for me? Can you give me specs that I like the specs to be a little bit higher quality? Can we talk about how to do that? There's feedback that you can give in the form of asking that you have nothing to lose. Say, hey, can we do this? Can we do that? And suggest ways for him to be more useful to you. The trap you run into, if you really think he's a waste of time, project manager, you don't even want to have that conversation because you think it's already lost. If that's the case, then that's information that you need to give to your boss to say, look, next time we reorg, can we reorg so I have a different pair? It might take you 6 months to get there, or a year, but at least now there's feedback that your situation is not working that well for you, and there's an opportunity for that to change in the future. So there's probably more thoughts I'd have on that later. Actually, one thing I should say, if you have other questions for me, I spend a lot of time answering questions, and I love it because it keeps me sharp. Go up to my website. You can send me mail. Anyone who's here, ask me a question. I'd be happy to answer a question over email. And they tend to be better because I can actually think about it. This is all just like, woo! So if you want a better answer, just send me mail. I'd be happy to answer that question. Thank you all for coming. This is fun. Check out the book. And hopefully I'll see you around.